Welcome, Naomi. Thank you for joining us. If you wouldn't mind telling our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Naomi Swartzentruber. I grew up strict in a strict Amish community, and I ran away when I was 17. At 19, I became a stripper, and I was a stripper for 20 years. And now I'm an author. My book is The Amazing Adventures of an Amish Stripper, an erotic memoir, and I'm also a mom. So life has been interesting.
That's quite the pendulum swing to go from, I'd say, as conservative as possible to as what's the other way? As naughty as possible, maybe, being stripper, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
So, to kind of start at the beginning, so growing up Amish, Eric and I are in Delaware, so really like the only knowledge of like the Amish culture that we have is from Lancaster, where there's a big Amish community, um, and the show Banshee for me. But
Yes.
growing up Amish, like what was life like? And like what ultimately led to you like wanting to leave?
So there are many different kinds of Amish sects. Some are, I call them more liberal. They can have more things. But I grew up Swartzentruber Amish, which is one of the strictest Amish communities, and we couldn't have any power tools, no running water except cold water. We had an outhouse. We milked 20 cows by hand. We had a big farm. We pretty much lived off the land. No cars. We went to town with horse and buggy, farmed the fields with the plows and the horses. And it was there were lots of rules. And at a very young age, I had to get up early in the morning and help with feed the chickens, and I would have to help with the chores, and just it was just how it was, but I was very happy as a little Amish girl, and we had to wear long dresses, dark colored, all the way down to our ankles, and we could only roll our sleeves up to our elbows, and we had to wear bonnets, so our hair had to be covered, and it was just a lot of work, and but that's just how it was. I didn't mind all the chores, and we only went to 8th grade, and we didn't have any like science or history or anything like that, just reading, writing, spelling. And in 5th grade, we had to learn how to read and write and spell in German because that's how all our Bibles and prayer books were all in German. But I already knew how to read, write, and spell in German pretty much because of my parents. They would teach us on the Sunday that we didn't have church. So church was only every other Sunday, and on the other Sundays, we would just stay at home and rest, or we could go visit our friends. But other than that, 6 days a week, we worked. On Sundays, there was no work except to feed ourselves and take care of the animals.
That would be that true day of rest, I guess.
Right.
Mm.
So eighth grade, that's an interesting. So like, why is eighth grade the cutoff for like education? Is there like like a reasoning behind that, or is that just kind of like the
I think, I mean, that's just how it's been for so long. And like I turned for my birthday's in May, and the school we don't have the long school days like the Amish school just started on Labor Day actually. They don't celebrate Labor Day, and it goes until around the end of April. But I turned 14 in May, and I don't know if it's that because they only go to school for that long because then the kids go to work on the farm. Like that's a
Mm.
really good, I don't know. We go to school and then we're out of school and we go to work on the farm. And
Basically, got to learn
sometimes,
learn to work. Yeah.
right, right. So I'm not sure if that's the reason.
What type of school did you go to? Was it just an Amish school, or was there some other third party school that you'd go to?
It was a one room schoolhouse, and typically there were around 20 to 30 kids in one schoolhouse with one teacher. If there were closer to 30 or 30 students, sometimes there was a teacher helper, and the teacher was an Amish man, a boy or a girl that was already out of school that was not yet married. So I always thought that must be hard to be a teacher, but that's just, and I was never a teacher, but there were other ones that were.
So what like I'm assuming there are like different requirements or like to be a teacher. Like could if you're in like the Amish community, like what determines if someone is allowed to like who dictates like who becomes a teacher or like is it just like kind of appointed or
So there's a school board and there's men, there's only the Amish men from the like the group where the school is, because there's different schools, like different schoolhouses, but in the community where the for this one schoolhouse there's men on the school board, and then they'll have a meeting and they'll choose someone that's not married and someone that they think that, and usually they have more than one option in case it doesn't work out for one family, and they it really depends who can spare a person, like a boy or a girl. Like I only had a male teacher in second grade. The rest of them were all females. But sometimes there are male teachers. It literally just really depends who's available or who can spare one of the kids. I know they're not kids, but they're like young adults, like generally 16 or older and not married.
Naomi, what were some of the what do you think are the some misconceptions that people have about Amish people, like something that we just don't understand or think about?
Well, one thing that I often get is that when people get really upset on my TikTok and Instagram, they say that the Amish people abuse their animals. And that's their way of life. Like that's their livelihood. I'm not, and I can't talk for all of them. And when I visited my parents in Iowa this summer, my uncle was there visiting as well. And he actually was talking about a family that does not feed their horses enough. And he was very sad about it. So I feel like that's a really big misconception that the Amish people abuse their animals. And then another one is that all Amish get to go on Rumspringa when they're 16. Like people often say, "Oh, so you just didn't go back after you went on Rumspringa." I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but Rumspringa in Amish language means running around. But the strict Amish, like I grew up, we didn't get to do that. Like to get away from the Amish how I grew up, we had to run away. Like I ran away when I was 17.
An actual runaway, not just yeah. Well, because Rumspringa, however it's pronounced, I feel like is to at least us, it's the I don't know you want to say the coolest thing about it. Like that's our highlight for and like if we were ever talking about Amish, it seems like a light because I mean honestly to me going to work on a farm all day, not having electronics or electricity or anything that could help me out just sounds terrible. But if it's all you know, I'm sure it's great, honestly. But then when we hear that, oh, well, somebody that has never had it gets to do all these cool things, it's like it seems awesome and fun. I don't that's the way that I feel at least.
I always hear too, it's like going to like McDonald's for the first time and like you know, like those like kind of things that like Eric, you and I take for granted because we can do whenever, you know.
Hmm.
I've been seeing a lot of videos too of individuals who like ran away from the Amish culture. And this one guy like talks about smuggling cell phones in for people. And
Yeah,
so like I don't know I don't know if you know who I'm talking about
I
but
do. I do. Yeah.
and so that has been popping up on my algorithm a lot, like specifically like those types of things. Now, how common was that, or was that just not something that like you knew about, or was it common for like technology to like? I mean, I feel like cell phones were a little bit different, but like, did people like used to sneak in like Game Boys and you know, like
I don't know about Game Boys. I ran away 27 years ago. And back then, we used to have the boom boxes, like the radios with the C or D cell batteries. And we had a camera, and we would have to hide these things in the barn or in the attic. and cell phones weren't around back then. But like I'm here, my partner and I actually just bought some property here in Michigan, like close to my Amish family, and it's really crazy to see how or to like notice how the kids are. Like they have cell phones. Hopefully they don't get in trouble. They're not supposed to be listening to this, but I don't know. But some of the kids do have cell phones around here, and I'm like, that's crazy. Like I know we had radios, but now they have like they get the batteries from a lot of the Amish around here have sawmills, and they get the batteries from the engine that they use in the sawmill on Saturday nights or Sunday nights. They pick them up and they, I don't know how they hook their music box or radio to this battery, and they go and drive around in the horse and buggy and drink beer. Like,
That sounds wild, actually.
It does.
And
Yeah.
so, like, but what is like the like punishment if you get caught with? Is I'm assuming it's just contraband. Like, what happens?
well, generally the parents will destroy whatever they find out, and then sometimes they have to stay home from the singing. And the singing is that's I know it's my niece was telling me, she's like, it's really not a punishment. Like they don't really do anything to us. They just take and destroy our stuff. We just get it again anyway. But sometimes they make them miss a couple of the singings, which is where once they're 16 and a half or older, they get to join the singing, and that's when they can start dating. This after church, wherever the church is on Sundays at 8 p.m. from 8 to 10, the kids that are 16 and a half and older that are not married, they get to go there and sing and eat popcorn and drink water, lemonade and stuff like that. And if there's someone they want to date, that's where you find someone, and they take the boy will take the girl home to the parents' house, and they have a date in the bed, in the girl's bed, and then the boy has to leave before the parents get up. I know it's bizarre.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard something that someone probably turned into something else where they said they've got to do it in like while the parents watch, like they have
Some of them
sex.
do that.
Really?
They
Oh,
don't
wow.
have sex. They're not
Oh,
allowed to have
okay.
sex. But,
Oh, okay.
but they have
Okay.
their date. Like some of them, they have to do it downstairs. They sit on rocking chairs, like next to each other. I don't know if the parents are actually there, but they're in the bedroom if they're not in the living room. But like the Swartzentruber Amish, how I grew up, they have a date in the girl's bed, but they're not supposed to have any sex, just kissing and cuddling and talking.
I see.
So
I
that's
see.
So-
the punishment if they get caught sometimes. They can't go on their dates or go to their singing.
Okay, I could see how that would be a punishment if that's a highlight. You probably want to do those things. Yeah.
Right? And you don't get to go party. But it's not that big of a deal, I don't think. They
Sure.
except they just have to spend more money to go get more of whatever they got, whatever got
The
destroyed.
contraband. Yeah.
Right.
right. So is marriage something that is like when you turn a certain age, like you need to get married, or is it something that's like dependent on the individual? Is there like a forced marriage like culture?
There is not a forced marriage culture. Generally, the Swartzentruber Amish, I don't know about all the Amish, but they get baptized at 18 or older, and then you have to be baptized to get married. And then generally they wait until both of them are 20, the men and the woman are 21. Unless sometimes, once in a while, the girl will get pregnant, and if it's a couple that's dating, like it's happened in, not like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, there was this girl, she got pregnant. She was 17 or 18. I'm not quite sure, but they ended up getting baptized and get married, and they got married because they were dating. So
Kind of like
sometimes
a
they get
shotgun
married
wedding.
earlier, but there's
Yeah.
never any forced marriages.
Okay.
Mhm. Well, that's I could probably talk about the customs and all that, but I am also interested in your step away from the Amish. What was it like to run away? Is it like a classic in the darkness, you grab a suitcase or something and just literally run away, or did you have some transportation or some help or something? What was your actual getaway looking like?
Like, did you have the bindle and the
So Before I was 17, I started sneaking out with the English boys. We call everyone that's not Amish English. Doesn't matter what country you're from, where you're from, what color. That's everyone's English that's not Amish. So I would sneak out with them. And one night I got caught. And I was like, okay, I know for sure I want to have fun the rest of my life, but I don't want to keep sneaking. So I was like, I'm going to run away. Like I knew for sure, but I didn't know how or when. And one morning I was picking strawberries in the garden by myself, and this man that used to deliver logs to my dad's farm came, and he came to the garden and he wanted strawberries. And I was like, whew, here's my chance. And I just blurted it out. I was like, I want to run away and live with you. And he was like, you're crazy. You can't do that. Your dad will hate me forever. And I was like, I don't care. Please help me. I have to run away. I don't have to, but I want to. And he's like, okay, I'll come back. And a week later he came back, and I was thankfully alone picking strawberries again. And he's like, you can stay with my mom if you help take care of her. And a week after that, my sisters and I took baked goods and strawberries to the non-Amish English neighbors. And I was like, here's my chance. I went in the house and I used the phone to call this man. And I didn't know there were answering machines. He didn't answer, but I was talking and swearing. And he figured out that I was trying to tell him I wanted to run away. So at 9 o'clock, like I was really upset. I was like, oh, I'm never going to be able to run away. So 9 o'clock, this truck rolls in, and it's this man. I'll call him Kevin and Christine because in my book, that's their names. I didn't even know that this man was married, but I didn't care because I didn't want to be with him. I just wanted to not be Amish. And I thought they came to like ruin my plan. And everyone went to talk to Kevin. And I was like, oh, barely breathing, but because I was freaking out. I whispered to Christine, I was like, please pick me up at this crossroad at midnight. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, don't tell anyone. She's like, don't worry, I won't. And my family, like after they left, I don't know, it was just, it seemed like they weren't going to bed. And finally they did, but I was so nervous and anxious. I tiptoed on like around 11:30 to the attic to get my little plastic grocery bag that I had my pair of jeans and t-shirt and a few things that I was going to take with me when I ran away. And when I got back downstairs, my sister, just older than me, was standing in the doorway. And she's like, you're running away. And I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, I know you are. She's like, I'm not going to let you. Our family will be way too upset. She's like, you're not running away. I'm staying awake all night if that's what I have to do. And I was so mad. And I like had this bag behind me. And then Kevin and Christine show up at the crossroads, and she's like, there they are. You're busted. I was like, that could be anyone. Other people could have a truck like that. I was furious. But finally, I went in my bed and I pretended that I was sleeping. And she eventually went to her bed, and I was listening to her breathing. And I'm like, oh, I think she's sleeping. And I like crawled on my hands and knees to the hallway to listen better. And I was like, I am pretty sure she's sleeping. And at that moment, I pushed the screen in my bedroom to the side, and I climbed onto the roof, and I jumped 12 feet to the ground, and I ran into the darkness. At this point, it's 2:30 in the morning. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, they're gone. Now I'm out here. I don't have a key to get back in the house. Like, what am I going to do? And I was like, well, I just was still running, but I ran like to this farm where I'm staying right now. And I hid in the granary until 5:30 in the morning. That was a really long time to be alone in the dark thinking about my future because I had just like run away. But my family, I heard them at 5:30 in the morning up doing chores. And I was like, they could come looking for me. I was like, I can't stay here. So I ran across the woods, and I hid in the woods until I saw someone turn their lights on at 8 o'clock. And then I called Kevin and Christine again, and they came to pick me up. I moved spots again. I had to run through another woods. It was awful. And I didn't know they had a car. So I'm listening for this truck, and there's buggies going by. I'm like freaking out. I'm like, I am going to get caught. Like someone is going to find me here. And finally around 10:30, I went and knocked on someone else's door, and they let me use the phone. And they finally came and got me at 11 o'clock the next morning. I was like, I can breathe. But it was so crazy. It was really hard.
Yeah, that sounds like quite the escape.
Yeah.
It sounds terrifying.
Well,
It
and
was
so like
terrifying.
if your parents, I mean, they say they caught you, would it have just been like come back, or like what after you kind of leave? Like they would have to have known what you were doing at that point.
At
right?
that
I
point,
mean,
they would have.
yeah.
And they
Um,
would have tried to make me go back.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I probably would have gave in because I was raised to be obedient, and I probably would have went back. So it was terrifying. And I did leave a note on the dresser to let them know that I didn't want to be Amish anymore, but they didn't believe me. And they started calling Kevin's house around 3 weeks after I left, and they're like, "We know you have her. Like, there's no other place where she could be." And they kept denying it and denying it. And finally, my dad was like, "I'm calling the cops." And the cops called Kevin, and they were like, "You can get in trouble for kidnapping." This because I was 17.
Oh, yeah.
And so Kevin told the cops where I was, and they came and talked to me, made sure that I was safe. And then I had to write a letter to my parents to let them know where I was. But it was
Wow.
not
So
fun when I first left because I was at this lady's house, and 3 days a week she would go to dialysis, and she lived down this dirt road, just this one house in a cluttered old farmhouse. And I was alone for days on end when I was used to being with a big family my whole life. And all of a sudden I'm just alone with no TV, just alone. And it was super hard.
sounds not as fun as you probably had hoped.
Right, and it really wasn't. I was like, I thought running away in English was gonna be fun. So Kevin and Christine, they ended up remodeling a couple of months after I left. They ended up remodeling their storage room, and I ended up moving in with them. So things were a little better. They wouldn't let me work until I was 18. They said I needed to learn about the English ways if I was going to be English. I know English is, some people get offended when I call non-Amish people English, but I'm just still used to it. I should probably start not calling them English, but
Makes sense though.
Yeah, no, that
right.
makes total sense. How close were you? Like, what was like the proximity for all of this? Like, were you super far from where you were living? Like, was their home like right down the street? Like, how, like,
15 miles.
okay, so you were pretty close, but not, I feel like, close
Far enough
enough.
that they weren't just going to come and stop by and try to find
Right.
you.
Yeah, right.
But they
Okay.
did come to the old lady's house. Like, there were a couple times that her and I got back and there were buggy tracks, and I'd be like, "Oh, I don't want to be here anymore." Like, they can just come and I could be here. Like, she would never lock her doors either. And I was like, I don't think that my parents would just go in and look for me, but it was really scary. Like, I did not like staying there. So
Did
it
your
was,
parents indeed hate Kevin and Christine?
I think so. Yeah. They were, yeah.
Probably.
He didn't, I don't think that, I don't know, something else happened too, why he didn't keep, he had a locking business that failed. So it was timing, I guess, that he didn't have to keep delivering locks to my dad's farm anyway. But like,
Yeah.
it was an interesting dynamic.
So after everything kind of settled down and you kind of like got your English bearings, what kind of transpired after that?
When I turned 18 on a Sunday, and growing up Amish, I never had a birthday party because back then they didn't celebrate birthdays. So I had a big birthday party, which was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I had finally had a party like that. But the day after, the lady, Christine, she took me to get my driving permit, and I could put in a couple applications, and I got hired at Burger King. And then, so that was in May, and so that was in May. But the January before, when I was still 17, I had gone to Ohio with some ex-Amish cousins, and I met a guy there, and we started dating. And he ended up moving to Michigan and working with Kevin in Detroit. And in August of that year, after I was 18, we moved to Minnesota, and I was working at a factory, and it was crazy. Anyway, he ended up breaking up with me the next March, and I was like, now I'm in this new state. I don't know many people, but thankfully there was one girl that I became super close with. Like, she was like my best friend. She still is. We are still BFFs. But I would often call her and tell her about my worries. How am I going to pay my bills? Like, I've never been on my own before. And she's like, there's lots of ways to make money. And I was like, what? And she's like, well, you could be a dancer. And I was quiet. I was like, what? like a stripper?" And she's like, "Yes." She's like, "I used to be a stripper." I couldn't believe it. I was like, I thought strippers were whores and horrible people. I didn't know much about them, but I certainly was never going to be a stripper. And she's like, "Let's go out Friday night." And I'm like, "Okay." She gave me a beer and we're driving and driving. I'm like, "Where are we going?" She's like, "It's a surprise." And then she pulls into this parking lot and there's a a pole with like silhouette girls and it's spinning. It was a strip club. And I couldn't believe she took me there. And we go in. She's like, "You don't have to do anything. Like, we can just watch." But I was terrified. There's like naked girls on stage when I walk in and they're looking at me and smiling. Like, I was still very much Amish mindset. Like, I mean, I still believe in God and stuff, but I was still like, thought I was going to hell and all that fun stuff because of the Amish brainwashing.
Sure.
But before I knew it, the manager came and talked to me and he was like, "Come talk to me in my office. I hear you need a job." And I was like, "I could never do this." And he's like, "If you change your mind," and I talk about this is actually the epilogue of my book of of the first night when I became a stripper. And before I knew it, three girls come by the bar and they were talking to me a little bit. And then they grabbed me and dragged me to the dressing room with my friend giggling behind. I was like, "What is happening?" But they stripped my clothes off and all agreed on a hot pink bikini. And they like helped me put it on because I was trying not to. And they pushed me through the door onto the stage. And I was like, wow, I am on this stage and I've never been to a place like this. It was really scary and overwhelming. But I was like, I'm here. I might as well make the most of it. And I walked to the pool and I tried to move like I saw the girls moving. I'm sure it wasn't graceful, but I did the best I could. And I was like, terrified because they were telling me on the first song I have to take my top off, and the second song I had to be completely nude because the club was nude. And I was like, I was so shy back then. I was like the shyest little, like, then ex-Amish girl, but I was super shy when I was Amish. And I was like, I can't be naked. They're like, you have to. And I did become naked on the second song. And so there was a moment where I was like, okay, it's okay. I'm here. And my hair like fell in front of my face. I have long blonde. I had even longer hair then than I do now. And I was like, oh, this is my shield. And I don't know, it was kind of fun. And everyone was clapping and cheering and throwing money. And when the second song was over, I gathered the money and I went backstage. And I don't know, I felt like I was just, there was so much adrenaline and excitement. It was amazing. I was like, this is pretty awesome, actually. Like that feeling of empowerment. I've never felt that in my life. Like something came alive inside of me that I didn't even know was there. And I had $55 and I was like, I think I could do this after all. And I went and told the manager and I went back the next night and I was a dancer for 20 years. I loved it. When I would go on that stage, like I actually miss it. I don't dance anymore because in 2020 I got pregnant and I have a daughter and I just didn't want to dance while I was pregnant. But I miss it. I miss going on stage because that empowering, like this thing inside of me that would feel so amazing when I went on
all eyes
stage.
are on you. You command the whole scene. Yeah, I could see that being that way. I think that I would have died if
I thought I felt like it. Yeah.
I was picturing, I mean, no one wants to see me be pushed on the stage and dance in a pink bikini, but I would have just actually died, passed away, and instead of dancing at all anywhere near a pole or even on stage. So props to you for that. That's
Thank you. Just talking about it, I get all like, oh, it brings back I feel the emotions, some of them, and like it's still like can still feel it. It's crazy.
Greg used to dance on a pole.
I used to dance on a pole. I'm just kidding.
Stop it.
That's
No,
awesome.
no. I don't have the
Just
the
joking.
core strength to do that. And I've heard though from a lot of people that it is a very empowering thing. Like that is a very healthy way of looking at it. You know,
there's a lot of like classes now, almost like fitness classes that are done just with a pole.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And besides feeling empowered, I loved doing pole tricks. Like it was so fun. I love music and I I don't know, it was amazing to go on stage and get on that pole and just spin around and do flips. And it definitely taught me a lot about a different world that I never knew existed. Besides, I thought it was bad. So,
Did you work at the same club for all 20 years, or did you move around?
so I danced in Minnesota at Class Act Peelers for 4 months, and then I met a guy, and I was thinking about moving back to Michigan anyway because I was like, I don't really. I had my one friend, which I was sad to leave her, but I ended up moving back to Michigan near Grand Rapids, and then I danced for 4 years there, and I started going to college. That's a whole nother story. I got into drugs really bad, but I'll just say where I worked. I worked at Sensations for 4 years in Grand Rapids and at the Red Barn for like 3 months. And then I moved to Las Vegas eventually. I worked at Spearmint Rhino, Cheetahs, Treasures, and I think was called the Leopard Lounge. It changed names a couple times. And then when I moved to Arizona, I worked at, it used to be called Bliss, and now it's called a different name. And then Sugar 44, I was there for 2 years, I think. So,
It's fascinating, like how tasteful those names are compared to like some of the clubs here in Delaware. What do we have? Eric Cheeks.
We do
And
have
like,
cheeks.
and yeah, it's just like very blatant, and like
That's
those all
funny.
sound classy.
Greg, you've never been to a strip club.
I have never been to a strip
That's
club.
right.
Yeah,
We were
I know.
gonna go,
We were gonna
and
go.
I was gonna take you,
I've never been.
and you wanted to go to the one that's like, no offense to Lower Delaware, but it's not like not
So-
anywhere near a city at all. You wanted to go
so-
to the one. Where was that?
So Delaware has 3 counties. We're a very small state.
wow.
And so so you can get from one end to the other in what, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, maybe
maybe 2 hours,
maybe
from-
2. But the lower parts of Delaware
are more rural.
They're more rural, and so they have some clubs down there. And I told Eric, I said, well, why don't we go? I've never been. My wife wanted to go. She's never been to one either. So we're like, well, let's just go to this one. And Eric was like, no, I refuse for this place to be your first location. So I still have never been. So
We'll fix
Wow.
that.
Yeah.
We'll fix that.
Yeah.
You should definitely go. And I always loved when the couples came because I don't know, it was fun to interact with the women.
Sure.
Some were super into it and some were super shy, but I always enjoyed when couples came in. It was pretty awesome.
We used to go every Valentine's Day, me and my wife.
Nice.
We should do that, but we had kids, but now they're getting
Yeah, and then
older,
you have
so-
kids, and then it just kind of changes everything. So
yeah, it's tougher to go out for a whole night. Ever,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm getting
course.
back there. I'm getting back there.
But
Absolutely.
so after you were so you said 2020 when so you said you got pregnant, and then you kind of stopped dancing. So and then when did the book come along?
So I started writing the book. Yeah, it was during the pandemic when I got pregnant, and the clubs were actually shut down while I got pregnant. And because I had bought a house in Vegas and sold it in 2018, I was able to stay at home during my pregnancy. Once the clubs reopened, I just decided I didn't want to be a dancer and I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So because I sold my house, I was able to do that. I often started writing my book, but I would always get stuck. And then I met this couple in Las Vegas who had published and written books themselves. And they were like, we will help you get started so you don't get stuck, so you can actually be successful. In 2011, I started writing. They helped me outline it. And after that, I just wrote. And then, was it in 2020? I think it was 2020. I was like, I had over 500 pages and over 300,000 words. Because they kept telling me, just keep writing, keep writing. I'm like, I've got this massive thing. Like, I got to do something with it. Like, I think I need an editor. And my cousin was in the process of publishing her book. So I reached out to her editor and she helped me. I ended up hiring her. And at first, I wasn't going to make it an erotic memoir, but my editor suggested that instead of just saying, oh, I had sex here or there or whatever, she's like, make it into an erotic memoir. And I'm actually glad I did. I know some people get upset because they're like, it's straight porn, but it says it's an erotic memoir. And then in August, it's been a year now. August of last year, I published it. Wow, I forgot it's been a year. It's
The
over a
the
year.
anniversary, yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's awesome. So,
Well, to hear that way, my wife's gonna want to read it because that's all
Yeah.
she likes to actually read is just her novels. She calls them.
oh, that's awesome. Well, I sent a book yesterday. I mailed a book to Greg. I can, if you send me your address, I'll mail you one as well if you want.
We'll share. I
Yeah, we'll,
appreciate that.
okay,
Thank you. Yeah,
of course.
my wife will also enjoy reading, as will we.
Awesome.
Um, so what was that like? I always hear that writing can be such a challenging feat, like, or was it just something that was just it came natural to you? I mean, it's your life essentially, you know? So was it easier to kind of write it all?
I don't consider myself a writer. I love math.
Mm.
Like I really love math and I hated when I went to college, I hated writing papers like with a passion. I never considered myself a writer, but because it was my own story and it was actually very therapeutic and healing when I would write it. I didn't realize until I was writing how much stuff that I was just pushing and shoving down and I never like dealt with these traumatic experiences. For example, like Kevin, he was explaining me and we had a ended up having a sexual relationship even before like that morning when I told him that I wanted to run away. Like he looked around and my brothers weren't around, my sisters were in the house. He's like, come with me. And he took me to the barn and made me give him a blowjob right there in the horse stall. So
Mm.
after I know it was I was like, what's going on? But even after I left and I found out he was married, I didn't know how to say no to him. And I feel like that like set up my life after I left. Not in a good way, in a negative way. Like it affected me for many, many years. And I didn't realize it until I was writing my book. I was like, oh my gosh, there's this pattern that just kept happening throughout my life. And it's not all his fault, obviously, but I was young and vulnerable and he took advantage of me. And then when I was 21, I got into drugs really bad. It started with coke and then I became a crackhead and I lost everything. Like for 2.5 years, I was a crackhead and I literally did lose almost everything, my car, my truck, my apartment, my furniture. And thankfully I'm here and I didn't die, but I
Mm.
was homeless and I went through a lot of things and writing the book, it really helped me deal with a lot of things. And I'm still on a healing journey, but that really like opened it up and started it.
Do,
So
do you find that those hitting those low points made you how did it affect who you are as a person now?
it definitely made me a really strong person. It made me strong and appreciative of life because, and I'm not saying that everyone should go and go through things I went through, but I feel like sometimes without the low points, you don't really, at least for me, I didn't appreciate the when I would come out of those points up. It made me appreciate it once I got out of those hard things. I was like, wow, I can't believe I just survived that. Or it definitely, I always also say, like, I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't go through those things. And I definitely have, it took me over 20 years, but I found the peace and the freedom that I was searching for when I left the Amish finally. So I'm grateful that I never gave up. There were a couple times in my life where I was like, I just want to end it. I don't want to be here anymore. Like, I ran away from the Amish for this. Like, this is hell. Almost like, why did I do that? Like, why am I going through this? But I never gave up. And for anyone listening, if you're going through the same something similar, don't give up. Just there's help if you look for help. I never went to rehab. For me, I figured out, I realized when I went to Vegas, one of my clients, when I was a crackhead, he took me to Vegas. And I realized then that I needed to get away from the people that I was hanging out with. Otherwise, I would be a crackhead forever. Like literally, that was like clicked. I was like, oh, I just need to not be there because when I was in Vegas, I didn't want to smoke crack. I didn't smoke crack there. And it was very challenging sometimes.
Well, it's nice too. Like I've heard we were actually talking to a band earlier this week and how impactful, I mean, writing, music, art as a whole, and kind of how that can one start that healing journey, but also just like the impact that it can have on you, whether it's writing a novel or writing an album, or so it's really cool to kind of see how that helped you and your journey by
I'm
being able
seeing a
to just
pattern. I'm
yeah
seeing a pattern there is
yeah.
that the tortured artist is tortured for a reason, and they're able to pour that onto their medium, whatever that might be, whether it be a book or a painting or music.
Right. No, and and part of the reason I also wanted to share my story in the book is to hopefully help others and to inspire others, because if I've gone through all those things, like certainly there's other people, and I do get quite a few messages. I've never gotten them from men, but I get them from women. They often say that they're still living my story and I give them hope, but they just haven't gotten on that other side yet. But reading my book and listening and hearing about what I went through and how I came out on the other side is very inspiring. So that is like, I don't know, because it's what I wanted set out to do, was to inspire and help others as well.
Well, and you came across our, I was going through Reels on our Instagram page, and that's how I think we kind of got in contact with you. And I was just scrolling through your page, and it was just full of inspirational videos, and and that's why I was like, we have to try to get you on, just because like you have such a unique but such an inspirational story that we feel like a lot of people need to hear as well.
Thank you.
So if someone wanted to buy your book, how would they like where would they be able to find that?
It's on Amazon. And if people want a signed copy, they can contact me on Instagram or TikTok at Amish Inspiration. They can message me for a signed copy, only in the US, though I only ship in the US because I don't want to deal with customs forms and things. But otherwise on Amazon, and it's The Amazing Adventures of an Amish Stripper, an erotic memoir.
So what do you think that like what do you kind of see as the next chapter in your journey?
The next chapter in my journey is to be the best mom that I can for my daughter, and just to keep inspiring people to live their best life and just to move forward. And there's going to be low points. You can get through them if you choose to. And one day I would love it if my book was a movie. So that is something that I'm working towards and hoping for,
That's
because
the
I think it
dream.
would be a great movie.
From what you've told us here today, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say so. It sounds
Sounds great.
it's
Yeah, that's like
fascinating.
that sounds like
It's got teeth, I guess. What is that?
Yep.
It's like a hook that just says what. It makes you want to think about it again. Yeah.
I think it's a story that people would be really interested in,
Thank
honestly.
you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time. And Amazon once again, or and what was your website one more time?
My Instagram and
Your
TikTok
Instagram.
handle is at Amish Inspiration, all one word.
Got it. And we will also put it in the description of the video.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
thank you for joining us. We
Thanks so much.
appreciate it, and best of luck in all your future endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I
Absolutely.
really enjoyed our conversations.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.